Hello and welcome to UbiPsych. I'm Brian Harward and I see psychology everywhere. This is my first YouTube video and I want to talk today about the psychology of the Mandela Effect. I have a PhD in organizational psychology. When I say I see psychology everywhere, I mean everywhere I see people, I see the effects of the human mind on behavior, interpretations, and the world around us. I love watching conspiracy theory videos. The newest one that I've been watching is the Mandela Effect. This is the idea that people have memories that do not match the world around them. They remember things differently than they are. Their memories do not match other people or even objective reality. The explanation for this? Well, that depends. Some people think these are memory errors. Other people, particularly those who experience very, very strong memories different from the reality we find ourselves in, say that they are in fact, or the rest of us are in fact, from another timeline, dimension, or reality. I'm not sure the appropriate language there. I'll let people make their own definition. But it's the idea that in fact your memory is different because you did have a different experience, and either something has changed, or different dimensions have merged, or something along this line. If you want more information on what the Mandela Effect is and examples of people who are strong believers, you should watch some other videos first. I'm here to analyze the psychological content of this belief. I am not here to say that it's false, and I am not here to say that it's real. I want this to be an open-minded discussion. So please challenge everything I say politely, or agree with it if you like it. Or tell me more. Give me things to look into. I want to talk deeply about this. And there's a good reason, no matter what your position on the issue. If you think this is a mass delusion, well, we would want to solve that, right? And help people to think more accurately, clearly, and to be less concerned with it. My interest in the video actually stemmed from the fact that I see so many high emotions related to these videos. People are scared, angry, and there is a clear psychological issue with this. And I'm not saying psychological disorder, just that it's scary if you believe this is happening. And when you tell people that it's happening to you and they don't believe you, that makes you angry. So it's definitely something we need to deal with to keep people healthy and happy. Beyond that, it could be that it's either true or untrue. And if you are a believer in the Mandela Effect, I still hope you will watch the video. Because number one, I'm not against you. I am going to try to explain the Mandela Effect through psychology. If you believe in it, you're probably like most of the others I've seen, where you want to understand it further. Part of that has to be determining fact from fiction. If some of the Mandela effects being reported are fake, or easily explained by psychology, you may not want to include them in your analysis of what it all means, or the origin of it. If you want to know why it's happening to you, what the meaning is, or some other thing like that, it would be important to you to determine if all of them should be included or if only some of them can be included. I think this can be of use either way. I already see people saying, well, that one particular effect someone else is complaining of is not real, but there are real ones. I think psychology can help with that as well, because when psychology can easily explain these away, perhaps they should be assumed to be not real. But what about the harder ones to explain? And I will admit, some of them are difficult to impossible to explain, while others are simple to explain in terms of psychology. So, looking ahead to this video, I want to cover a few things. Number one is the worst evidence, the things that I find not convincing, and I'll tell you psychologically why I think they're easily explained, and they're probably not Mandela effects. They're probably not anything other than, and I know the believers are sick of hearing this, poor memory, things like that, but I'll explain it as well as I can. Then I'll give what I think is the best evidence, the things that either for me were personally convincing or those that I have trouble explaining. Either they're creepy or mysterious, and I would say are strong evidence at the moment. And I'll also talk about what it would take to convince me that this is a real thing versus my current skeptical but open-minded position. A couple of ground rules, if you will. I'm not going to call anyone a conspiracy theorist, even though I called this a conspiracy theory. A real conspiracy would be, of course, people getting together in a group to deceive a lot of people. I don't think that's happening at all. And it's not a hoax. I won't be accusing anyone of lying, although I'm sure someone is out there lying to cash in. Almost all the videos I have seen are very, very honest people, very concerned, frightened, angry, excited, whatever. And so I'm not going to be accusing anyone of anything negative, other than maybe making a mistake. That or having honestly experienced something really scary and weird. I also will not cover certain aspects or certain cases of Mandela Effect, at least not now. Number one, there will be anything involving biblical changes. I have no authority on that subject. I wouldn't know if it's changed. I'm not particularly interested if it's changed. That to me is equally interesting to anything else, but I know nothing about it. So I'm not going to go there. Second, there are some insanely strong effects reported that really can't be investigated in the way I'd like to and are very touchy. What I'm talking about is a few people out there saying things like family members that they knew for years, children, spouses, siblings disappeared. Or I think the reverse has been claimed, that someone who didn't exist, they later found out they did exist. Maybe they had died, but they never even knew they existed, and it was a family member. I think it's probably obvious, but I have to stay away from those because I don't know. They're too strong. Either they're real, either they're absolutely right, and this has happened to them, or there's some serious mental illness happening, schizophrenia or other, sort of distortion of reality. And I don't want to accuse anyone of that, nor do I want to deal with the high emotions with that. You'll see me saying things about maybe how false memories could be created, not 10 years of a life spent with someone else. That, of course, I wouldn't suggest that's made up. If it is made up, it's either then intentional or really a severe mental problem, and it wouldn't be nice to pick on those people. And again, I'm not making that accusation right now either, just to say it would have to be that. Either real, I guess some intentional lie, a third option, or a really, really serious mental issue. And so I'm going to stay away from that. So let's start with the weakest, worst evidence. If you've been looking through these videos, you've probably seen this as the majority of it. People like to focus on the spelling of things, logos, phrases from movies, the titles of TV shows. I lump all of these into the weakest category. That doesn't mean they're not real. That's up for discussion. But I find that they're not particularly convincing, and I want to explain why. Some of this you've heard, so I will keep it reasonably brief, but then maybe go into a specific example a little more to give some depth to what we're talking about. You should see these examples around. People are claiming that the Chick-fil-A restaurants used to spell their name differently. So as I understand it, the current spelling is CHICK-FIL-A. Just plain weird no matter what. It's not even complete words. And there are other things like lines from movies, like, is it life is like a box of chocolates, or life was like a box of chocolates. In Star Wars, does the line, Luke, I am your father, exist or not? Again, I think you're going to watch these videos before or after, and so I don't want to get too mired in them. But the reason I find them to be weak is because, I will throw one more in, Berenstain versus Berenstein or Stein Bears. How is that word spelled? They all follow a similar pattern. Number one, they're something we could misremember. We know that due to either attention blindness or poor memory encoding or construction of the memory over time or poor recall, of course we could get these. But we can't ignore that huge segments of people are remembering the same thing. So there's something to that. They're at least interesting. If nothing else, they belong in psych textbooks for, wow, look at these which were super prone to misremembering. But they all have the same common fault, which is that the misremembering, if we're going to call it that, and again, I acknowledge it may be real, but if we're trying to explain it as misremembering, they follow a predictable, highly understandable psychological pattern with few, if any, exceptions in terms of these where it's about spelling or wording or how something is stated. So Chick-fil-A, a lot of people say it's CHIC. I believe some also CHIK. I don't see why this is such a huge issue, but if they've already butchered the rest of their title, their label, -FIL-A, in my mind, that makes it actually consistent for the rest of it to be misspelled. You feel like it's in the land of bad spelling and not real words, so CHIC might make perfect sense. It might even be weird to you that the real word, CHICK, which has a meaning and is just a short version of chicken, or for like a baby chicken, wouldn't even belong, and they would probably screw up the rest of it. If fillet is meant to mean like a cut of meat, then right, that shouldn't be FIL-A, so there's bad spelling there, there's bad spelling in the front. Our minds like consistency and would feel like it's either a poorly spelled logo or a well-spelled logo, and probably not a mixture of both. And we have these other things such as in Forrest Gump, I guess he actually says life was like a box of chocolates, even though we all remember it, including myself, almost all of us remember it as life is. And again, it makes sense. It's sort of a correction in the mind. Call it a function of heuristics or just consistency. But when he was referring to his mother saying that, he said mama always said, so he's in past tense, and he says life was like a box of chocolates. But I wouldn't go to my friend and give them, you know, a little pop philosophy and say life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Or I would say is, not was, because past tense doesn't make sense there. So your mind is sort of correcting it to say, well, although he said was, the phrase must have been is in common use. So she actually said is, and that's what he meant to say. Plus, just the language is unclear. When you actually say life was like a box of chocolates, life is like a box of chocolates, it's hard to tell the difference, so you may just not notice, and your brain would interpret the one that's more common, more sensible to you, which would be is. Without giving hundreds and hundreds of examples, they all follow this pattern. And I ask myself, if these are real changes, meaningful changes, why are they all exactly what we would predict and nothing surprising? Berenstein, Bears, however you want to say that, follows that as well. It's a last name. Stein is common. Stain is not. So it's going to be misspoken, misremembered. My own last name is incredibly hard to spell and pronounce properly, and I get other variants of it more than I get my correct name. And there are 3 or 4 variants, all of which are more common than my name, that people think are my last name. I have had students in my class, then in my dissertation group, and then asked me to write them recommendation letters, and they still misspell my last name. They just choose one of the more common ones from their mind. And I have seen people notice, or if I point it out, be completely blown away. And they apologize and they say, how did I never notice for years? Because you're normal. And I don't usually correct it because it's been all of my day correcting it. So that pattern of following what we would think would be the direction of error makes almost all of those suspect. Not particularly convincing. One more where I want to talk deeply about it, and if you have any more suggestions, if there's one you want me to talk this deeply about, whether that's to prove me wrong or just for fun, let me know. But there was one where there was a show called Sex and the City. And most of us remembered it as Sex in the City, myself included. And I don't know what proportion of people, but a huge portion of people. I don't know if it's half and half or a majority one way or the other. But it is misremembered. And this is one where, again, it's ambiguous. So, how come, how come it wasn't a complete change to, Sex in the Metropolis or something? That would be quite obvious. But of course, it's this little word that's ambiguous, moving either from a more sensible phrasing to an equally sensible phrasing in this case. I did a little research on this one. And I said, well, okay, I'm a researcher by nature. What can I do to determine if this is real or not? And I said, let's look at a similar case. Is this what normally happens to things with and in the title? Does it happen across the board? And I just thought as quick as I could, what else out there is really famous and has and in the title? And I thought of Pride and Prejudice, the book. And so I hit YouTube thinking, let me see people saying this and see if people say in instead of and. I think everyone knows the real title, but maybe it sounds like in. And that would be some evidence. So I thought I'll scour YouTube a bit and see if I can find some to say, look, people do it here too. I did better than that. The first 4 I looked at, all of them, 100%, seem to support that idea. So I didn't have to sift through 30 or 40 like I thought I would. I'm going to show you those clips now, and I want you to notice that each of them, in my opinion, write a comment if you disagree, either says it ambiguously, so it's Pride and Prejudice, or Pride and Prejudice, or Pride and Prejudice, and you can't really tell what they're saying, or it sounds more like in, even though of course they know the title. And so if you just heard of the book from your friends, you might think it's Pride in Prejudice. I think in that case, the reason it's not a Mandela Effect or misremembered is because it doesn't make more sense that way. It makes more sense as Pride and Prejudice. I don't know what Pride in Prejudice would mean, although it could be something. So I want you to watch those 4 videos right now.
Today I am going to be reviewing Pride and Prejudice.
I'm going to review Pride and Prejudice.
Hello, today we're talking about Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen.
My name is Courtney, and I hate Pride and Prejudice.
And I think you'll agree with me, again, comment, I don't want to be the ears for all of you, but I hope those were clear clips. Links are provided below, so if you want to see those book reviews or go see the original, they're there. And I feel like this provides really good evidence that we know how these sorts of things happen. They're spoken casually, they're heard wrong, and we say them wrong as a result. Moving on, let's get to what I find to be good evidence. Because as I said, I don't think it's complete nonsense to entertain this notion. Although I am generally on the side of skeptic right now. I don't believe the Mandela Effect is real, but it could happen, and there are unexplained things right now. Among those weaker things, there are some strengths. One is, as you've probably seen if you've been watching these videos, one of the movie lines that is out there is from Snow White, where we all know mirror, mirror on the wall. It's actually magic mirror on the wall. I have to mention that one because it seems to be absolutely overwhelmingly remembered, mirror, mirror. And it is on t-shirts quoted in other movies. And someone said there's a book named that based on, obviously not the, the original Snow White, but a book actually called Mirror, Mirror or something like that. So at the very least, we'd have to talk about it to say, why this one? Why was this one so universally misremembered? Or is this one convincing enough that it must be a real Mandela Effect? I'll throw you a quick explanation for what I think it could be. I think the repetition not only sounds better to us, and so our brain prefers it and likes the idea of mirror, mirror better, but also she's sort of casting a spell or doing an incantation or whatever you may call it on the mirror. And I think repetition is pervasive to those, so much so that we would assume it or prefer it. That might explain it, but man, is that a popular one. So I've got to say that. Interestingly, one, and I don't want to sound like I think my opinion's better than anyone else's, because I am in some cases saying your personal experience doesn't matter because we know your memory's bad. My memory can be bad too. But there's one right now, very new, about the Monopoly guy from the Monopoly game, which I've played quite a few times in my lifetime, but not a ton. And I remember him, like most people, as having a monocle, as well as top hat and a mustache sort of look. And he doesn't, in fact. So again, I can admit that it's a memory error, but that one just, I was completely convinced he had that. People say it's confused with Mr. Peanut, and that's possible, I guess. I don't know, but it's a pervasive one. So you're probably thinking, if those are the strongest, are you really just a debunker? No, not entirely. The weirdest, most unexplained thing for me is the photo, which I'll put up here for you. It's actually part of a video from CERN, the Hadron Collider, where they were saying we're happy at CERN, and people were dancing around, and there's a frame in it where they show this guy, and he's got these stacks of papers around, looks like a researcher of some sort. I think this is what people think I look like and what I do. And the thing's around his neck. It says Mandela in Bond number 1. Apparently, one of the James Bond actors was last name Nelson. So between those, it's Nelson Mandela, which is what the name effect is named for, because people have different memories of when Nelson Mandela died. And so from a Mandela Effect perspective, this is them claiming success, that their machine has altered the timeline or something along those lines, saying we did it. and our proof is that Nelson Mandela now died at a different time. It is certainly weird, and I have no explanation. These other ones, I'm full of explanations, whether you hate them or you like them. This is weird. And it doesn't follow that pattern of, well, this is just normal. And I have no idea why he'd be doing this. They're weird signs that don't make any sense. Of course, not to me. There may be a rationale. You know, if it said happy birthday around his neck or a sports team or something, that wouldn't be so weird, I guess, because people do those sorts of things. But as it is, count this up as a mystery. And as long as it's unsolved in that way, I think it's strong evidence that maybe something weird's going on there. I don't believe it, but gosh, is it weird. And points in your corner if you say this is evidence. I tend to agree. Okay, so what would convince me? Well, number one would be really demonstrable things that don't follow the pattern we would predict from psychological error in memory or encoding of memories or attention. And we don't see much of that. If you have examples, please put them out there because I haven't seen them all, although I've watched tons of videos. Things that are shocking or unexpected or major change, you know. Don't tell me, oh, there's an extra letter in some famous actor's name. Come on, of course we can misremember that. But if you show me a picture of a famous actor we all know and his name or her name has completely changed, wow. Or if it's something like that. And then the other thing would be, and I've seen beginnings of it being claimed, but none of them that made sense to me, either because I didn't know the effect or the video didn't make sense to me. But the idea has already been out there that maybe one of these has changed and then changed back. If we witness that, I could very quickly, as in instantly, become a believer in this effect. If something we've given tons and tons of focus to suddenly changes back, I would be convinced. Because obviously I'm saying, on some level, you just assumed it was Berenstain Bears, even though it was Berenstain. Okay. I think we can do that. And we know that our minds do that. It's a well-established psychological truth that we don't always pay a lot of attention and we make a lot of errors. But if you've watched several hours of videos on this and Googled it and had your mind blown that it's not spelled the way you thought and then it switched again or back to a third thing or back to the original, that would be so incredibly strong evidence that I would probably flip to the side of believing while still open-minded at that moment. If I woke up tomorrow and it was everywhere you looked, Berenstain Bears, and always was, according to the record, wow, mind blown, side changed. If there's another argument out there that should change my mind, tell me. Because I really and truly am open-minded. Yeah, I'm a skeptic, but that's because I'm a science guy. But this could be real, obviously. Okay, so again, if you're interested in looking into this more, I may do videos on more of this, but some of the psychological concepts that I think should be looked at here, either to debunk this or to determine true from false Mandela effects. I've mentioned some, but I made a list here. One is constructive memory. You probably know about that if you've been looking at these videos. It's the idea that memories are sort of pieced together in our mind and not saved like a tape recorder that's a real clear memory. Other memory flaws are out there as well, but that's the biggest one. Also, look at maybe things like eyewitness testimony and how bad that is to see that what we think we saw, what we think we experienced is really off. Also something called attention blindness. This is that we don't even notice things accurately in our environment. One of my favorite videos to show my students in social psych and cognitive psych classes is this famous video where you're asked to watch students passing a basketball around and count how many times they pass the basketball. So you're quite focused on the basketball. As we play the video, a few students, this is going to be a spoiler, by the way, if you want to go check this out, maybe pause here and go look this up, something like attention blindness, although the best keyword would also be a spoiler. But anyways, what happens is we watch the video, a few students in the room will chuckle or laugh really loud. The rest have no idea why that's happening. And I've been in classrooms where there's maybe 40 students, none of them have seen it before. And I get to the end of the video and I say, well, how many times did they pass the basketball? And everyone gets the right answer, with a few exceptions. And then I say, but did you see the gorilla? And that's the other keyword if you want to see this video, look up with the word gorilla in it. the vast majority, 70, 80, or 90% of the class will say, "What gorilla? I didn't see a gorilla. What are you talking about?" The students laughing know exactly what I'm talking about. And we go back and play the exact same video clip to find that while they watch these students pass a basketball, a student in a gorilla suit walks into the middle of the scene, right in the middle, stops, staring at the camera, and then leaves. People didn't see it. They didn't see it. They had no idea it was there. So if you don't think you could, not saying you did, but that you could, fail to notice that it's Berenstain Bears and that A is not an E, of course you could. So I think we need to have that more rational debate about it. Also, there's something called Salience, and that is that when we find these things that are misremembered, they become super important. We say, wow, that's, such a big effect. We notice, something, a good example is, we think of flying as dangerous because we see plane crashes, but of course it's really safer than driving because of those brilliant images in our mind of plane crashes. The same thing here is true. These few things we found around the world that seem to not match our memories are really stick out, but what about the millions upon millions of things that just are remembered normally, well, consistently? We don't give those much thought. Also, another word to look up is heuristics, Heuristics, and this is about how lazy our brains can be toward the goal of efficiency, and it's where a lot of errors happen. So you can read about that as well. And then the last thing I want to throw out there is that I also do statistics work, and odds is an important thing here, and that is to say that when we have millions of things in our world, trillions of things in our world that we experience, it would be incredibly rare for some stimulus, some item, to be typically misremembered by all humans or most humans. But in a world of trillions of things, such an event, no matter how rare, would occur a few times. And so that also helps us to explain that, yeah, there's just these weird things. It's something about the human brain. They're inevitably misinterpreted. Not inevitably, but, expectedly. And not many things, of course. We're not saying most things have been misremembered, but a few rare things. Maybe just this collection of words like Berenstain Bears. Perhaps it's not only the Stein being common, but that it's BERENSTAIN, and it's two E's followed by an A. A lot of times our brain sees those E's and just sees all E's. Maybe there's some weird combination that's just that odd outlier that just must absolutely exist if there are trillions of things in our world. I'm going to leave it there for now. If you have suggestions, questions, criticisms, please keep it civil, but I'm expecting to be disagreed with. I've seen the comments on the other ones. Just be rational and nice. I won't delete any comments unless they're just atrocious. Please don't insult each other, insult each other's arguments, and tell me what I've done wrong. What did I miss? What did I get right? Any of those things. Subscribe, and that's it for now. Please join me again on Ubipsych, where I will see psychology somewhere else.